I was thrilled when I found out I was pregnant with twins. My husband David and I had been trying for a baby for over a year, and the news felt like a miracle. At first, David seemed just as excited as I was, but something about his reaction made me uneasy. When we went to our first ultrasound together, his excitement seemed almost exaggerated. I chalked it up to him being genuinely happy, but deep down, a nagging feeling told me something wasn't quite right. As my pregnancy progressed, David became increasingly attentive, more than he had ever been before. He took over all the household chores, made me breakfast in bed, and even started reading books on parenting twins. I appreciated the support, but the drastic change in his behavior was unsettling. It was as if he was trying too hard to make sure everything was perfect. My relationship with my mother-in-law, Margaret, had always been strained. She had never fully accepted me, and our interactions were polite but cold. However, when David told her about the twins, her attitude changed overnight. She became overly involved, constantly calling to check on me, offering to help around the house, and planning an extravagant baby shower. Her sudden interest felt insincere, and it only added to my growing anxiety. I tried to ignore my suspicions, attributing them to pregnancy hormones, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. David and Margaret's behavior continued to be overly enthusiastic, and I started noticing strange things. David would have hushed phone conversations with Margaret, and they would abruptly change the subject when I walked into the room. Margaret even asked me odd questions about my family history and blood type, which she dismissed as casual curiosity. When I mentioned my concerns to my best friend, she told me I was being paranoid and that I should be grateful for the support. But the feeling of unease persisted, and I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to their excitement than they were letting on. As my due date approached, I tried to focus on the positives. David and Margaret were there for me every step of the way, attending doctor's appointments and making sure I had everything I needed. But despite their efforts, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. When I went into labor at 38 weeks, David rushed me to the hospital and Margaret met us there. The delivery was long and difficult, but finally, I heard the cries of my newborns. Exhausted but happy, I waited to hold my babies, but something strange happened. The doctors and nurses were whispering, and when David and Margaret returned to the room after seeing the babies, they looked upset but tried to hide it. A doctor came in and told me that one of the twins hadn't survived. They said it was a stillbirth, something that sometimes happens with twins. I was devastated, but I couldn't process what they were telling me. I had heard two cries, and I couldn't understand how one of my babies could be gone. When I asked to see the stillborn baby, they told me it was too late and that the baby had already been taken away. David tried to console me, telling me to focus on our surviving daughter, but something didn't feel right. Margaret echoed his sentiments, urging me to count my blessings, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't being told the whole truth. The grief of losing one of my babies was overwhelming, but so was the suspicion that there was more to the story. Over the next 2 years, I tried to move on. I focused on raising my daughter, but the loss of her twin weighed heavily on me. My relationship with David became strained, and Margaret's constant presence was suffocating. The nagging feeling that something was wrong never left me, but I tried to push it aside for the sake of my daughter. Then, one day, my mother came to visit me while David was at work. She seemed nervous and asked if we could talk privately. What she told me shattered my world. My mother had discovered that my second baby hadn't died. Instead, David and Margaret had conspired to give one of the twins to David's infertile sister, Laura, and her husband. They had orchestrated the entire thing, even paying off a doctor to fake the stillbirth. My mother had learned about this from a close friend of Laura's. At first, she didn't believe it, but she started investigating and found proof: a recorded phone call between Laura and her friend, discussing how they had acquired one of my babies, and paperwork related to the adoption. My mother waited to tell me until she was absolutely sure because she didn't want to cause me unnecessary pain. When she played the recording for me, I felt like my world was collapsing. Everything suddenly made sense: David and Margaret's behavior during my pregnancy, the stillbirth, the secrecy. They had stolen my baby and let me believe she was dead. I was furious, heartbroken, and overwhelmed with a sense of betrayal. That evening, when David came home, I confronted him. At first, he tried to deny everything, but when I told him about the evidence, he broke down and confessed. He admitted that Margaret and Laura had come up with the plan, and though he had initially been against it, they convinced him it was the right thing to do. He had gone along with it to keep peace in the family and to make Laura happy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The man I had loved and trusted had betrayed me in the worst way imaginable. I told him to leave and immediately filed for divorce. I also started the legal process of reclaiming my stolen child. My lawyer was shocked by the case but assured me that we had a strong legal standing. We filed a lawsuit against David, Margaret, Laura, and the doctor involved. As the investigation progressed, more details came to light. It turned out that Margaret had been planning this since before I even got pregnant. She had known about Laura's infertility and saw my pregnancy as an opportunity. The excessive care and attention during my pregnancy had all been part of their plan to keep me calm and unsuspecting. The day of the birth was the hardest to come to terms with. Both of my babies had been born healthy, but one was quickly whisked away while I was still groggy from the delivery. They had planned every detail, from the fake stillbirth announcement to the quick removal of my baby from the hospital. Laura and her husband, who had been told it was a private adoption arranged by Margaret, were devastated when they learned the truth. They immediately agreed to return my daughter, and they were not charged but had to undergo therapy and supervision before being allowed to pursue legal adoption in the future. The court case was long and emotionally draining, but in the end, justice was served. David and Margaret were sentenced to prison time, and the doctor had his medical license permanently revoked. I was finally reunited with my daughter, but the reunion was bittersweet. She had bonded with Laura and her husband, the only parents she had known for 2 years, and the transition was difficult for everyone involved. It's been a few months since the reunion, and we're still adjusting. My twins are getting to know each other, and it's beautiful to see them together, but it's also heartbreaking to think of the time we lost. The divorce was finalized, and I got full custody of both girls. David has supervised visitation rights, but I'm not sure I'll ever be able to forgive him for what he did. The trust is completely shattered, and my relationship with Margaret is beyond repair. Laura and her husband have apologized profusely and want to maintain a relationship with the girls, but I'm still unsure how to handle that situation. My mother has been my rock through all of this, helping me with the girls and supporting me through the legal battles. I don't know how I would have gotten through this without her. As for me, I'm still processing everything that happened. I'm in therapy, trying to work through my feelings of betrayal, grief, and anger. Some days are better than others. I'm overjoyed to have both my girls with me, but I'm also mourning the 2 years I lost with my daughter. I'm also dealing with the guilt of not trusting my instincts during the pregnancy and after the birth. I knew something was off, but I let myself be convinced that I was just being paranoid. I'm trying to forgive myself for that, but it's not easy. The girls are doing well, all things considered. They're bonding as sisters, and it's amazing to watch. My daughter, who was an only child for 2 years, has had to adjust to suddenly having a twin sister, but she's adapted remarkably well. My reunited daughter is still adjusting to her new home and family, but she's making progress every day. I'm taking things one day at a time. Some days, the anger and pain threaten to overwhelm me. Other days, I'm filled with joy at having my family complete at last. It's a roller coaster of emotions, but I'm doing my best to stay strong for my girls. I've connected with support groups for parents of kidnapped children who were reunited, and their stories have helped me feel less alone. It's a unique kind of trauma we've experienced, and it helps to talk to others who understand. Looking to the future, I'm focused on healing and building a new life for myself and my daughters. I'm planning to move to a new town for a fresh start, away from the painful memories and the prying eyes of those who know our story. I'm also considering writing a book about our experience, hoping it might help other families and raise awareness about the need for better safeguards in hospitals to prevent this kind of tragedy. To those who supported me through my original posts and updates, thank you. Your words of encouragement and advice helped me more than you know. For anyone going through something similar, trust your instincts, fight for the truth, and don't give up hope. Healing is possible even after the deepest wounds.